In this video, I'm going to introduce you to project management documents known as purchase orders and work orders. Now, purchase orders and work orders function basically the same way. It's the designer purchasing the products needed for the completion of some kind of custom product or a purchase order for any kind of project. A purchase order is generally used for a product or an object. A work order is used for the purchase of some kind of service. And so in our case, we're going to see purchase orders for the trim and fabric for this pillow that we've been looking at. And then we'll see a work order from the workroom who's going to be sewing and creating this pillow. So you can see the purchase orders, we've got a couple of them here, and they all basically look the same. And so let's go look at them one by one. Okay, so the anatomy of a purchase order. We can see we've got the company logo here, and then we've got it at the bottom here as well. The order number is written up here. Now, this is a number that correlates to the records organization of the design firm. Now, they have their system of how they create order numbers or purchase order numbers. It could have, client initials, it could have numbers, it could have all sorts of combinations. It's generated by the design firm to help them reference maybe projects, maybe rooms, and then a number of, based on the product it's going to be referring to. But really, the reason why this number is important is because if for some reason this trim is delayed and the designer has to call the manufacturer, Samuel and Sons has to call the manufacturer and say, hey, where's this trim? The manufacturer will have this number in their system, and they're going to go, hey, what's the purchase order number? And the designer is going to go, it's purchase order number 200001. And then, for example, if Samuel and Sons has many purchase orders from this design company, they will be able to figure out which one specifically is in question. So once again, this order number is really important, generated by the designer, used to reference anything related to the purchase of this product. So let's talk more. We can see it's labeled purchase order up here, and then it's got the to and the ship to. Now this is really important because the to is the manufacturer. This is the manufacturer of this trim piece. Now you can see the address, phone number is written here. The ship to is this trim is going to the workroom where they are fabricating the pillows. Now, sometimes designers want this stuff shipped directly to their design firm so that they can check it and make sure that the correct material came in. For example, if for some reason a digit got messed up, either going from the specification documents to the creation of the purchase order, it was an error by the designer, or it was input in error by the person entering the order at the manufacturer's end. In any case, it's possible that the incorrect fringe color or style could show up. And now that's why there's a photo of it here. There's a description of it, and why, if this is going to be shipped directly to the pillow workroom, why the pillow workroom might have the specification information that we saw in a preceding video so that they can confirm. Good workrooms will confirm, but sometimes designers want to make sure that the correct product is coming, and so they'll ship it directly to the design firm. The only problem with that is if there's a bunch of living room, fabric, lots of different clients, the design firm can very quickly be kind of filled up with fabric. And then also if it's shipped to the design firm, then the designer has to then figure out how to get all these bolts of fabric and trim, etc., over to the pillow workroom, which is an extra trip. So um, there's a lot of different ways that this could be handled. In this case, the designer is sending this trim directly to the workroom. Now, remember in a preceding video, I also mentioned the CFA. That's another thing that designers may specify to send a CFA in advance of sending the fabric itself. And so sometimes the CFA becomes then the confirmation that the correct product is going to be sent. So the designer may note, hey, send CFA for approval prior to shipping the product. And that would be written like maybe right around here somewhere, or in the notes section. And then the manufacturer will see this purchase order entered in, send the CFA, the designer approves the CFA, and that initiates the sending of this product. The only problem is if the designer forgets to approve the CFA, then it will delay the sending of the purchase order or of the product. So there's really a lot to this, but you can see that's kind of the thinking behind the ship to. It requires a lot of trust and double checking by the designer. You can see over here, client name, project ID, maybe the person who ordered this on the design firm side might put their name here. Again, we've got some dates about when it's ordered. A vendor number, a lot of times if there's a vendor number within the design firm system that refers to Samuel and Sons, they may put that there. If they have a certain person over at Samuel and Sons that they like working with, they can put it to their attention. We can ship via best way or quickest way, and pro forma means that the designer has to pay for the product before it is shipped, instead of perhaps buying it, net 30 or net 60, which is, the manufacturer will send the product and then the designer has 30 or 60 days to pay for it. So you can see here, this is typical of an order form: quantity, unit, description, a lot of information provided here. And this is really just for everyone to double check and make sure the right product gets sent. Unit cost and total cost, this should match the estimate. And then you can see the subtotal, the freight, and the sales tax is written there. Okay, let's look here. You can see total deposit requested. This is what the designer has to pay. No discounts applied, and then the balance in the currency. Now, there's a few purchase orders in here that you can see. They're all basically set up the same way. You can see here, this is the purchase order. This is for another piece of trim. It's going to Kravet. That's where the designer is getting the material from. Shipping once again to the workroom. All of this information may be similar or the same, but there's one thing that I actually wanted to call out here, and I didn't call this out on this original purchase order, but it's here as well. And this is really important. Most purchase orders will leave a spot for the side mark, and the side mark is what's going to be written on the box or the bolt of fabric after it's packed up. It's what's written on the shipping label. And in this case, the side mark is the design co, client name, living room, and then white and ivory beaded tape for the sofa pillows. So imagine this is coming in a box or in a bolt, if it's a really big piece of fabric. It's all wrapped up in plastic or in a box, and it's got a shipping label on it. And it gets sent and arrives at the workroom where the pillow is going to be created. Now imagine this pillow workroom. They're really good at making pillows, and they work with every designer in Jacksonville, let's just say. And so they're constantly getting materials that are going to be made into pillows or drapes or something like that. So when this arrives, they're going to identify, the pillow workroom's going to identify, oh, hey, this is for the design company. Yes, they're going to put it in the pile with all the stuff, all the pillows from all the clients from the design company. And then they're going to go, oh, it's from, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Okay, we'll put it in a smaller pile with just that client's stuff. And then, oh, it's going to be for their living room and it's for their pillow. So what they do is they have way back here, they have this. And so now if the client's name and that, client's name, room number, and pillow was labeled here, then they would be able to hold this in their hands and they would be able to check off as the materials arrived. And once they had them all, then they would go ahead and get started on the sewing of the pillow. So it's really important that all of these documents have the right names and numbers and they go to the right people, because we have to make sure that the process can kind of move through pretty well. And then you can see here, we've got that purchase order once again to the pillow workroom. Okay, same kind of structure here. Okay, now this is the purchase order to create the pillow itself. So the purchase order, or it could be work order because this is labor, goes to the pillow workroom and it's shipping to the design company. So that's the design firm. Now, it could go to the design firm, definitely. These are small, that would work out well. But if this was a sofa, or if there was lots of pillows, you could see how very quickly the design firms like cubicles would get filled up with all this stuff. So a lot of times for something big, it may go to a warehouse where all of the client's stuff is waiting, and then one day it all shows up and they install it at the client's site. So that's another option of who we could ship this stuff to. We could also ship it directly to the client, although we probably wouldn't want to do that because there's a high risk that they could see the cost and then have an awareness of the markup. Let's see. Those are probably the two most common shipping to, either to the design firm itself or to some kind of warehouse that's, accepting things from, on the designer's behalf. So you can see here again, that project information, all that kind of stuff is the same. You can see here the side mark, the design co client name, and then here is the side mark, so that when this gets delivered, let's say it's to the design firm or to a warehouse, that the warehouse who may be receiving stuff from all the designers in town and storing it until, it's all installed, they can say, okay, we're going to put this on our shelves with this client's project. We know it's from the design co, and we'll put it in the pile for their living room. Because eventually, in a design project, there's hundreds of thousands of things that are purchased and created and then sitting on the shelf. And then one day it all shows up at the job site and the designer installs it. They probably don't install it one pillow at a time. The other thing that would be great is that when these two pillows arrive wherever they are, the designer immediately opens them up and makes sure that they're perfect. Or if they're shipped to a warehouse, the warehouse receiving department says, hey, we received, this client's living room pillows. Do you want to check them? So there's a constant process of checking the entire time. And so you can see that's all basically the same. And then finally here, this is the purchase order for the fabric. This is kind of a rare situation because this fabric already exists somewhere in the designer and at the design firm. It's not coming from a different manufacturer. And so you can see it's to the design company, and then once again shipping to the pillow workroom with all of that information already there. Okay, so this is kind of a long video, but you can see how the kind of the paper trail of purchase orders is done. Remember, initiated by the signing of the client proposal, and then the designer has to create all the purchase orders for each material that's used in the product and make sure that it all goes to the right place. So just to recap, the three materials are coming from the manufacturer, in this case the design firm, and going to the pillow workroom, where they will be gathered until all of the materials are there. It's the designer's responsibility to make sure that the purchase orders are correct, that the products are paid for and shipped on time, and that the correct products are received at the pillow workroom before the pillow workroom gets started and on creating the pillows. And then it's the designer's responsibility to check the work of the pillow workroom and make sure that the pillows are perfect when they are received. So those are the purchase orders, and sometimes called work orders, related to project management.